This happened just a few weeks ago. I'm a 32-year-old paramedic, and I thought extra night shifts at the local hospital would help me save for a house after my breakup. I knew the building well. It was old and creaky, with buzzing fluorescent lights and the smell of antiseptic. I thought nothing could really shake me. But I still can't stop thinking about what happened. On my second night, I noticed room 214. It was supposed to be vacant. Yet, the door was always locked. I could hear faint murmurs sometimes. Maybe I was just tired, but I thought I heard soft taps as well. I shrugged it off. Just my imagination, right? I kept doing my job, checking on patients and making sure everything was okay. As the week passed, the whispers grew louder. I met a nurse named Lisa. When I mentioned room 214, she glanced at it nervously, her face pale. "Stay away from that room," she warned, her voice shaky. I thought she might be exaggerating, but that freaked me out. Something felt off. Later that night, as I walked down the corridor, I thought I saw a figure dart past my vision. I turned around, but there was nothing. The quiet machines hummed, and the antiseptic smell seemed stronger. I told myself again that it was probably just stress. Then I began hearing patients whisper about being visited. They talked about a nurse who didn't exist. "She came and tucked me in," one old man said with worn hands, "but I didn't see her face." That sent chills down my spine. Was I losing it, or was there something off about this place? Deciding to investigate, I stood in front of room 214. My heart raced. I knocked lightly. No one responded. I waited, but everything stayed silent. An uneasy feeling washed over me. Then I heard a faint tapping, like fingernails against metal. My body went cold. I couldn't decide whether to stay or go. When I finally turned to leave, I thought I felt someone watching me. I spun around but saw nothing. Just room 214, locked and dark, holding its secrets tight. I wanted to forget about it, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone that night. The days blurred into weeks. My shifts became harder. I noticed the staff growing anxious, like something was weighing on them. The whispers from room 214 seemed to follow me. It was maddening. One night, while checking on a patient, I heard it again, clearer this time. "Help me." It came from room 214. I froze, my heart racing. I knew I shouldn't go back, but something pulled me. I found myself standing in front of that door again. I raised my hand and knocked, but a loud crash echoed inside. The tapping stopped. A chill ran through me. I wanted to scream, but my voice locked in my throat. I stepped back, terror gripping me. I never should have gotten close. Now, I wonder what lies behind that door. Was it just my fatigue? Or was something truly wrong? All I know is I can't forget those words. "Help me." They haunt me still. I avoided room 214 for days after that chilling encounter. Each time I passed, I could feel the door staring back at me, taunting me silently. My shifts became a haze of restless nights and uneasy sleep during the day. I tried to focus on my work, but every fleeting sound, every whispered word, drew my attention back to that room. It was late one night when things escalated. I was helping an elderly woman named Mrs. Henderson settle in for the night. She had a kind face, but her eyes held a flicker of fear. As I adjusted her blankets, she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength. "Don't let her in," she whispered, glancing nervously towards the door. I froze. My heart raced again. "Who?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She shook her head, her eyes wide. "The nurse. She comes at night. You won't see her, but she'll come." I felt a cold sweat on my brow. "There's no nurse in that room," I assured her, my own uncertainty creeping in. She let go of my wrist and closed her eyes tightly, as if wanting to shut the world out. I finished up with Mrs. Henderson and stepped into the hall. The fatigue weighed heavily on me, but the fear of what might happen was stronger. I wanted to dismiss her ramblings, but her panic felt real. I glanced at the door of room 214 again. When the clock struck 2, I found myself standing in front of it yet again. I wasn't sure if I was brave or just foolish. My hand hovered above the door before I finally knocked. Waiting for a response, my breath came shallow. Silence wrapped around me like a shroud, then I heard a soft ticking sound from within. It was like the tapping I had heard before. It was rhythmic, almost like a clock. I leaned closer, straining to hear. "Help me," the whispered plea echoed in my mind. I took a shaky breath and knocked harder. Silence answered again, but the tick-tock continued. Suddenly, I took a step back, and my shoulder brushed against someone behind me. I spun around, half expecting to see a nurse, but the hall was empty. An icy panic washed over me. I wasn't alone. Just as I turned back to the door, it swung open on creaking hinges. My heart lurched, and I stumbled back. It was dark inside, shadows coiling like smoke. I could hardly see, and the ticking grew louder, pounding in my ears. That's when I saw a figure at the back of the room. My mind raced with fear. I couldn't make out any features, just the shape, hovering in the darkness, still as a statue. I wanted to run, to slam the door shut and forget this nightmare, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Something compelled me to take a step forward. "Hello?" I called, my voice trembling. The figure didn't move, but I felt an overwhelming sense of dread settle deep in my chest. Then everything went dark, the lights flickering out overhead, plunging me into cold silence. My heart pounded as questions raced through my mind. What was in that room? And more importantly, was I about to find out? When the lights flickered back on, I stood frozen at the threshold of room 214, the air heavy with dread. A chill ran down my spine. The figure was gone. I strained my eyes, hoping to catch a glimpse of movement in the darkness, but there was nothing. Just an empty room, filled with the echo of the ticking sound that now felt more sinister than before. Without thinking, I stepped inside. The door creaked ominously behind me, and I felt a surge of regret. I had crossed a line I couldn't uncross. My pulse raced as I took in my surroundings. The walls were a dull gray, plaster peeling away in places. A faint smell of antiseptic mingled with something else, a scent I couldn't quite place. The only light came from a small lamp, flickering at the far side of the room. I moved toward it, the floor creaking beneath my feet. As I approached, the ticking sound grew louder, more insistent. It seemed to be coming from behind that lamp. When I reached it, I realized the ticking was coming from an old clock, covered in dust. But there was something eerie about it. It was ticking too fast, like it was counting down to something. A mix of terror and intrigue pushed me to investigate further. As I brushed the dust off the clock, I caught that same reflection from my earlier encounter, a shadow darting across the far wall. I spun my head, but there was nothing there. Just the faint sound of my breathing echoing in the quiet. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice shaking. Silence answered back. I turned back to the clock. Its face was cracked, and as I adjusted the hands, the ticking abruptly stopped. A knot formed in my stomach. I glanced back toward the door. I was acutely aware that I was deep inside a place where reality felt distorted. Then I heard it, a faint whisper carried on the air, soft yet unmistakable. "Help me." My breath hitched. It was the same plea from earlier. I felt the room close in around me, shadows dancing at the edges of my vision. I needed to leave, but my feet wouldn't move. A sudden noise behind me jolted me into motion. I turned, ready to bolt, but instead found myself staring at a medical chart hanging on the wall. It was open to the page of a patient from years ago, a name I didn't recognize. But written beneath it were notes that chilled me to the bone. Unresponsive to treatment, and then, last seen October 12, 2010. Missing. I stumbled back, my mind racing. Had this patient been the one I'd seen? The figure lurking in the shadows? Just as I was about to piece it all together, the lights flickered again and went out. I was not just trapped in a room. I was trapped in a nightmare. Panic flooded through me as I fumbled for the door. But as I reached for the handle, it refused to budge. My heart pounded in my chest. Something was keeping me here and it was getting closer. The darkness engulfed me, a thick blanket that swallowed sound and light. I felt my way back to the clock, hoping the subtle glow of the lamp would return. But instead, I was met with cold, unyielding nothingness. My hands trembled as I tried to steady my breathing, focusing on the whisper that still lingered in the air. Suddenly, I heard the sound of shuffling footsteps. Panic surged again, and I stumbled toward the wall, pressing my back against it. My thoughts raced. Was it just my imagination? Or was there truly something or someone here with me? Then, unexpectedly, the lights flickered back on. My heart sank at what I saw. A figure stood at the foot of the bed, obscured in shadow. I couldn't make out any features, but I could feel its eyes on me. The energy in the room shifted, the fear felt tangible, wrapping around me like a vice. "Is anyone there?" I stammered. I regretted the question the moment it left my lips. It was a taunt against whatever had cornered me in this suffocating space. The figure didn't move. It was waiting, or maybe it was trying to decide if I was worth the trouble. Just as I gathered the courage to take a step back, the clock on the bedside table began to tick violently. One loud tick after another echoed, drowning out the sound of my racing heart. I couldn't focus on anything but that clock, its pendulum swinging as if fraught with urgency. Why was it so loud? And then I heard it again, a voice, clearer this time. "Help me. Please." The words felt like a dagger, sharp and piercing. I glanced back at the figure. It had moved closer now, just a silhouette against the flickering light. I felt frozen, anchored in place by terror. "Why are you here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It didn't answer. The figure continued to loom closer, and my mind screamed for me to run, to escape this place, but I was rooted in fear. I spotted the door again, hoping it would give way, but my body was locked in place. That S when I saw it, the chart from earlier floated gently to the ground, pages fluttering as though caught in a breeze. My breath hitched as I recognized the name at the top. It was the same patient disappeared. I took a hesitant step toward it, my curiosity battling against my instinct to flee. As I moved, I tried to piece together the connection. The shadows in this room, the whispers calling for help, were they connected to the missing? The figure was now just steps away, close enough for me to feel a shift in the air. I could feel heat radiating from its form, contrasting the cold dread pooling in my stomach. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I had to know. "Who are you?" I finally managed to ask. In response, the figure smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that felt more like a curse than a comfort. Then everything went dark again. The lights betrayed me, vanishing, plunging me back into suffocating blackness. It was finally time to confront whatever was in that room with me. The dark was thick, almost a living thing. I could barely breathe, fighting against the knot in my throat. My eyes strained, trying to adjust to the emptiness, but it was as if the shadows were alive, shifting and swirling around me. I couldn't tell if the figure was still there. "Hello." I called out again, voice shaking. My heart raced. This wasn't a bad dream. This was real. Then, out of the silence, came a sharp crack like something breaking. It shattered the stillness, and with it, my resolve. My instincts shouted to flee, but where could I go? The door felt a mile away, a glowing exit just beyond my reach. I gathered my strength and moved in that direction, tentative and cautious. Just as I took a step, the lights flickered back on. And there it was again, the figure at the bed. Only now, it was different. It was clearer somehow, more defined against the light, and I gasped in horror. Its face was gaunt, eyes hollow and dark, yet I felt that piercing gaze digging into me. I backed away, nearly tripping over the corner of the bed. The room felt alive with energy. I glimpsed the chart lying crumpled on the floor, but my attention snapped back to the figure as it slowly pointed toward the door. "Leave this place," it whispered, each word slow and deliberate. The voice was raspy, like dry leaves scraping against stone. "You shouldn't be here." A cold chill washed over me. I wanted to cry out, to ask why or how, but terror paralyzed me. Instead, I turned and stumbled back, desperate to put distance between me and the figure. My feet were determined, but my mind raced with confusion. What did it want? As I regained control over my limbs, a second sound called out from deep in the shadows. A low, mournful wail that made my skin crawl. It was unmistakably a plea for help, similar to the one I had heard earlier. "Help me. Don't leave me here." The voice curled around my heart like ice. I was torn. Was one of these souls trapped here, unable to escape this torment? I felt a strange pull toward the sound. Against my better judgment, I glanced back at the figure, now standing still, as though waiting for my next move. Then the air shifted again. The wall to my right emitted a sound, a soft thud that echoed in quiet desperation. I hesitated. Had someone real been in this room? With newfound resolve, I inched toward the sound. Whatever it was, it might give me answers. Each step felt heavy, like the air was pushing back against me. I finally reached the wall and pressed my hand against it, feeling the jagged edges of something behind it. I pushed aside my fear and forced myself to investigate. As I pried at the edge of the paneling, my heart raced. What was hiding here? Before I could fully uncover the mystery, the figure let out a sharp hiss. The piercing sound cut through me like glass, and I turned back, panic mixing with curiosity. But that was the moment the power flickered again. Lights shut off, plunging me back into darkness. The whispers intensified, swirling as if they were alive, drowning me in a sea of despair. I needed to know what lay within these walls and who was behind the veils of shadow. I had no choice. I couldn't run anymore. The truth awaited me. I pressed my back against the wall, feeling the coolness seep into my skin. The air felt heavy against my chest, and I took a shaky breath, reminding myself to focus. I couldn't let fear consume me. The whispers became louder, a chorus of hopeless cries melding together. It overwhelmed me. Names echoed through the darkness, names I didn't recognize, yet the desperation in each syllable twisted my insides. Then suddenly, a harsh light pierced through the darkness, illuminating the space around me. I shielded my eyes and squinted. It was a flashlight. My heart skipped a beat as I pulled my gaze downward to the source. My hand trembled, still gripping the edge of the wall. "Who is there?" came a voice, cutting through the noise like a knife. "Horace," I replied, recognizing the familiar tone. It was the night nurse I had seen earlier. He stepped closer, his silhouette a comforting presence against the chaotic shadows. The light swept past me, and I could see the figure, but it was still cloaked in its eerie abyss, its eyes glimmering like a pair of dark stars. "What are you doing here?" he asked, concern etching his features. His flashlight flickered nervously as if responding to the energy in the room. "You shouldn't be, I know." I was just, but before I could finish, a loud crash echoed through the hallway. It sounded like a door had been thrown open somewhere nearby. Horace's flashlight faltered and swung wildly, the beam catching the dark figure at the bed. It hadn't moved, but the air was charged with a tension that made my skin crawl. "We need to go," Horace urged, grabbing my arm. His grip felt solid, a lifeline in this storm of uncertainty. We turned to leave just as another crash came, this one closer. The door at the far end of the room swung wide open, and I froze. Shadows spilled into the corridor like smoke chasing the light. "What was that?" I whispered, a knot tightening in my stomach. "Stay close," Horace said, his voice strained as he stepped protectively in front of me. I felt the shadows reach out, brushing against my skin like cold fingers. They clung to me, an icy echo of the despair I had heard earlier. I forced myself to break away from the suffocating darkness and focused on Horace. "Please, we need to get out." Then something caught my eye, a single, pale hand reaching through the doorway. It was ghostly, almost translucent, and appeared to belong to someone trapped between this world and another. I shivered, taking a step back. "Don't look!" Horace shouted, his voice rising above the chaos. "Just run." But it was too late. The hand withdrew, and with it came a low, anguished wail that shook the very walls around us. I didn't know if it was a cry for help or a warning, but my instincts urged me to move. We burst through the door and stumbled into the long, fluorescent-lit corridor. The shadows clung to the corners, whispering unintelligible warnings. But we ran, feet pounding on the linoleum floor, hearts racing in unison. As we reached the end of the hall, I glanced back one last time. The figure was gone, swallowed up by the darkness. But I knew the real danger was still lurking. "You saw it too, didn't you?" I gasped, suddenly breathless. "Yes, and whatever that is, it's not just a ghost." The weight of his words settled in the pit of my stomach. What did he mean? Before I could ask, another echoing crash sounded from deeper within the hospital, a fierce reminder that we were not alone. Everything was about to change, and I could feel it deep in my bones. We sprinted down the corridor, the harsh buzz of fluorescent lights whipping overhead as adrenaline pushed us forward. Each step felt like we were breaking away from something that was chasing us, even though I dared not look back. "Where do we go?" I gasped, desperation creeping into my voice. "Down the stairs," Horace urged, veering left at the first intersection. My feet echoed against the linoleum, and I fought to keep up with his lurching shadow. I could sense the intensity rising in the air around us, the weight of unseen eyes observing everything. Horace led me through a pair of double doors that swung open with a creak. The stairwell opened up in front of us, dim and claustrophobic. The chatter of the voices faded into a soft murmur, just loud enough to echo in my mind. Horace rushed ahead, but I hesitated briefly, my gaze drawn to the corner of my eye. "Keep moving," Horace called back, concern twisting his expression. Some instinct tugged at me, pulling me toward the edge of the darkness in the stairwell. Something felt wrong, like a riddle I couldn't solve. The light flickered, barely illuminating the steps leading down. As I stepped into the stairwell, I noticed something, an object lying on the ground. It was a small, tarnished badge with the name Dr. Lee emblazoned on it, along with the logo of the hospital. I didn't recognize the name but felt a stirring awareness, like I should. Before I could reach down to pick it up, another crash resounded through the building, shaking the very foundations. This time, it felt closer, reverberating through the walls. My heart raced at the thought of what might be lurking behind us. "Let it go. We need to keep moving," Horace urged again, his voice rising in panic. That I took a shaky breath and nodded. Whatever mystery lay behind Dr. Lee's badge would have to wait. I followed Horace down the twisting stairs, each step feeling like it took me deeper into the unknown. At the bottom, we emerged into what looked like an old basement utility room. It was cluttered with forgotten boxes and old medical equipment, casting long shadows in the harsh overhead light. "This way," Horace instructed, guiding me toward a door at the far end, but something caught my eye, movement behind one of the stacks of boxes to my left. My breath caught in my throat. "Did you see that?" I whispered, my body instinctively tensing. Horace paused, glancing back as his flashlight flickered ominously. "No time. We're not safe here." His urgency clashed with my curiosity, fueled by an instinct that pushed against my fear. I stepped closer, peering around the corner of the boxes. Nothing moved, but I felt that creep of dread settle deeper into my bones. "Get over here." Horace's voice snapped me back to reality. I tore myself away from the shadows, reminding myself that whatever was here could wait. We pushed through the door, emerging into an hallway lined with old, forgotten offices. My gut churned as I saw the flickering lights and realized how isolated we were. What now? I asked, scanning my surroundings for clues, but my words fell flat under the pressure of uncertainty. The security desk should be up ahead. We can call for help, Horace said, swallowing his fear, but as we moved deeper, the air thickened with tension. A low growl echoed from the far end of the hallway, freezing us in place. The sound wound through the stillness like a dark whisper, warning us. Did you hear that? I whispered, my mouth suddenly dry. Yes, and something tells me whatever was behind us wasn't the worst of it, he replied, eyes wide with alarm. And that's when the lights flickered and went out, plunging us into darkness. I could feel my heartbeat throbbing in my ears, the heavy silence pressing against my chest. Run! Horace shouted as something shifted within the darkness. We moved without thinking, driven by instinct. But as we sprinted forward, I realized we weren't just running away from what was behind us. We were also running towards something unknown, something that was waiting just ahead. We burst through the door at the end of the hallway, the world outside this dark prison now blurred by an urgent haze. I stumbled into a shadowy reception area, cluttered with old desks and disheveled chairs. Despite the chaos, it felt oddly sterile, as if it had been frozen in time. My senses sharpened. I listened for any sound, anything that indicated we weren't alone. Where is it? Horace muttered, frantically scanning the room. There has to be a phone around here. Just then, a flicker of movement caught my eye. I turned my head sharply. In the corner, behind a desk, a figure hunched low, shrouded in the darkness. My heart thundered in my chest. Horace! I hissed, pointing. He froze, staring at where I was looking. The figure straightened slowly, and as the light from Horace's flashlight illuminated their face, I gasped. It was an old man, his hair wild and his clothes tattered. His eyes bore into us, wide and manic, as if he had seen too much. Help me, he croaked, voice raspy. Who are you? Horace demanded, his voice firm despite the fear rippling through him. I've been here for days. They don't let us go, the old man said, his words spilling out in a jumble. The others, they don't understand. Others? What others? I interjected, clutching Horace's arm, searching his face for answers. Before the old man could respond, a guttural growl echoed through the room, louder this time, closer. The old man's expression shifted to one of pure terror, and with a surprising burst of strength, he shoved past us, sprinting toward an old door marked, emergency exit. No. Wait. I shouted, but he was already gone, disappearing into the shadow of the doorway. That was a bad idea, Horace muttered, backing toward the reception desk, scanning each corner for a sign of what could be approaching us. The growling intensified, and I realized it wasn't just one sound. There were echoes of rustling beyond the walls, like something was prowling, searching for us. I felt a tingle run along my spine, a primal instinct to flee rising within me. Where are we going? I asked, fear creeping into my voice again. Let us find that exit, it might lead us out of this madness, he replied. We crouched behind the desk, the old man's frantic figure now a distant memory, making our way toward a heavy door at the far side of the reception area. I couldn't shake the feeling that the dark corners of this place withheld secrets I wasn't prepared to confront. A door creaked nearby, sending my heart leaping. I exchanged a panicked glance with Horace. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed down the hall we had just fled from. My instinct screamed to move, but I was rooted in place. Then, just as I steeled myself to run, the emergency exit abruptly swung open. Dread pooled in my stomach as I caught a glimpse of the darkened stairwell on the other side, a chilling reminder of our journey thus far. Let's go, Horace urged, his voice sharp and urgent, but as I turned to follow him, the growl erupted near the doorway again, deep and reverberating. It seemed to promise that whatever it wasn't done with us. In that moment of hesitation, I spotted something small on the floor, glimmering faintly in the low light. I couldn't help but lean closer. It was a pendant, half buried in dust, with the initials DL engraved on it. That was when the growl turned into a howl, and I realized we were no longer just trapped in a hospital. We were prey. Run! I screamed, adrenaline pushing me forward as the threat materialized behind us. The air thickened as Horace and I bolted for the emergency exit. Each of my breaths felt shallow, the weight of our fear chasing us down the hall. The howl echoed like a war cry, sending chills racing down my spine. We stumbled into the stairwell, the darkness swallowing us whole. The air was stale, carrying the scent of mildew and something foul. I hesitated, glancing back at the door we had just flung open. If whatever that was chased us into here, the stairs might offer no refuge. Keep moving. Horace urged, gripping my arm tightly. His voice spurred me forward that we descended cautiously, each step creaking ominously under our weight. The dim light above us flickered, casting twisted shadows against the walls. I felt like a ghost, fleeting and hollow, stripped of safety. What were those noises? I whispered, my voice barely a breath. Do you think the old man made it out? Horace shook his head, the uncertainty in his eyes punctuating his silence. I can't think about that now. We just need to focus. Just as we reached the next landing, a crash echoed from above us. I jerked to a stop. What was that? Panic clawed at my throat. I don't know, but we have to hurry. There was urgency in his tone, a heightened awareness that pushed us forward again. This was no time to linger. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the stairwell wall above. I squinted into the darkness, my heart racing. Did you see that? I gasped. Stay close, Horace said, his eyes darting around as we pressed on. We reached the door at the bottom of the stairwell. Horace shoved it open, revealing a dimly lit corridor. The walls were lined with faded images of smiling faces and happy moments, all jarring against the grim reality of our situation. Is this the way out? I asked, feeling more doubt creeping in. It has to be, he said, although his confidence was strained. As we stepped inside, the air felt different, charged, creeping with an unsettling energy. The corridor stretched ahead, but just then, I noticed movement behind a nearby door marked staff only. It was subtle, but enough to send fresh waves of dread coursing through me. Did you see that? I whispered, straining to catch any sound. Before Horace could answer, the door swung open slowly, revealing a group of disheveled figures, their eyes wide with fear. They looked just as lost as we felt. One of them, a young woman with a dirt-streaked face, stepped forward, gasping for breath. Please, she said, her voice trembling. You have to help us. They're coming for us. What do you mean? I pressed, my heart racing again. The doctors, they aren't who they appear to be. They're not here to help. Are you saying they're the ones chasing you? Horace asked, his voice colder now. Before she could respond, another growl reverberated through the corridor, closer this time. All instincts kicked in as we stood frozen, a wave of realization crashing over me. We need to move. Then everything shifted. The lights flickered and went out, plunging us into blackness. The growl turned into a roar, and the figures began to panic, scattering in all directions. Get back! I yelled, grasping Horace's arm as he moved to follow one of the frightened strangers, but it was too late. In the pitch black, something lurched forward, crashing into the corridor. I felt a surge of energy, fear and adrenaline fueling my next impulse. Gripping Horace tightly, I pulled him away from the chaos and plunged deeper into the corridor. We can't stay here. Then out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of something emerging from the shadows. A figure, tall and looming, its features hidden but its intent evident. In that moment, clarity washed over me. We were not merely trapped in a hospital. We were ensnared in something much darker, where none of us were safe. Run! I shouted again, knowing we were about to face the true horror that awaited us. The echo of my voice bounced off the walls, but the only answer was the frantic beating of my heart and the mingled cries of the terrified figures behind us. We didn't pause to see if anyone had followed. Instinct pushed me forward through the corridor. Horace was glued to my side, his eyes darting, and I could feel the weight of whatever chased us pressing closer as we rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. In front of us stood an old, rusted emergency exit sign flickering dimly, its promise of escape tantalizingly close. I grabbed the handle and yanked the door, praying it wouldn't be locked. To my relief, it swung open, revealing a staircase leading up into the unknown shadows. The sound of the growls swelled behind us, a menacing reminder that time was not on our side. Up! Now! I shouted, and we surged into the stairwell. Each footfall reverberated in the confined space, adding to the symphony of chaos unfolding around us. My body screamed for breath as we climbed higher, pushing ourselves to escape whatever darkness had taken root in the hospital. With every step, I felt something whisper at my back, an insidious presence that promised only dread if we faltered. Climbing, we reached the landing where the door above us pressed a shiver of hope into my heart. We might yet reach safety. But the moment Horace pushed the door open, light flooded the stairwell, illuminating an empty hallway that still bore the echo of previous encounters. It felt strange and surreal, like stepping into another world that was both familiar and alien. We'd escaped whatever resided beneath, but the unsettling weight of uncertainty hung heavily in the air. Which way? Horace asked, panting, his eyes wide with apprehension. I scanned the corridor, my heart racing as I noted two ways, a left turn leading deeper into the hospital's labyrinth, and a right turn with a flickering fluorescent light that beckoned us. I felt drawn to the flicker, the light an illusory beacon shining in the darkness of my thoughts. Right. I decided, pulling Horace along as we ran, leaving behind the malevolent whispers. We raced down the hallway, adrenaline coursing through me like fire. The far end seemed to fade into darkness, and the air chilled significantly, but as we closed in, my foot fell on something, an odd glint on the floor. I halted abruptly, looking down to see the pendant I had spotted earlier, now shimmering in the light. My heart sank. Horace, wait. This I need to what? He snapped, eyes darting nervously around. We don't have time. But I felt tethered to this pendant, its initials like a cruel lure spelling out a fate I wasn't ready to confront. I think it's connected to all this, the whispers, the figure. I yelled, holding it up, but his panic broke through the urgency. Fine, but we have to hurry. He urged, his voice tremulous. Every instinct screamed to stay, but I pocketed the pendant, hoping it would yield answers later. We sprinted down the flickering corridor, the shadows undulating around us. And then it came again, a growl, closer this time. I glanced back in frantic terror, and my blood turned cold. Silhouetted against the dim lights, something loomed, its features indistinct yet pregnant with darkness. Horace grabbed my arm, ushering me forward as we pushed through the door at the end of the corridor. On the other side, a large room awaited, filled with forgotten items, hospital beds draped in dust, and scattered medical equipment abandoned by time. But even here, a sense of foreboding lingered, and the sense of urgency swelled in my chest. Where do we go? I panted, searching for a clue amid the chaos. The moment I mentioned it, it happened. The growl morphed into a feral snarl, echoing from the entryway we had just come through. As if sensing our desperation, the shadows seemed to pulse and breathe. I turned to face Horace, and his expression mirrored my own growing horror. There! He shouted, pointing towards a window. If we can get out. But the growling intensified, and with it, a sweeping rush of darkness rushed toward us. The growl had morphed into an amalgamation of agonized wails melding together in a horrific crescendo. We were running out of time. With no choice, we dashed toward the window, shoving what little furniture we could aside. Help me! Horace cried, and together we heaved against the grime-covered frame. It budged, reluctantly granting access to the outside world. Fingers trembling, I grasped the edge, pulling it open, its staleness nearly suffocating. Now! I shouted, and Horace quickly scrambled through, knocking into the hard ground below. As I followed him, time seemed to stretch, and I felt a shadow loitering close behind a promise of retribution. But as we landed on the damp grass outside, we stumbled, disoriented yet relieved. Breathing the crisp night air into my lungs felt bittersweet as I stared back. The hospital loomed tall in the moonlight, its windows dark and foreboding, but a sense of safety swelled around us. We had escaped, or had we? In the distance, there was a soft rustling sound from the shadow of the building. I felt the hairs on my neck rise. The whispers and growls had not gone had they merely waited for the darkness to call them forth again. As Horace tugged me away, I glanced back at the imposing structure, knowing that something was still there biding its time, waiting for the next unwitting night shift worker to roam its shadowy halls again. "I just want to forget," I murmured as we stepped away, leaving behind unanswered questions and a lingering sense of dread. But deep down, I knew that haunting echoes could never truly be silenced, and as we walked away, a whisper floated through the air behind us, soft yet pointed, a nameless voice threading itself into my thoughts, begging quietly once more.